So the Mark 8 Golf R line and the Mark 8 Golf R, what's the difference? And why did VW even kind of create these two kind of types of cars in terms of an R line and an R? So I'm going to explain that and kind of go through it. Now, I've been fortunate enough to drive an R quite a few times on the channel, as you can see. And I've also been fortunate that the R owner's other half had a Mark 8 Golf R line. So as I'm talking, I'm going to show you kind of the looks of it back to back. And I'll let you make your own mind up. But for me, they look exactly the same. Honestly, they have the same kind of gloss black bits. They have the exact same R badge on the outside. The way the owner kind of spec'd the R line was in a way which was very much Golf R like. They actually have the 18-inch Pretoria wheels, which the Pretoria is obviously being on the Mark 7 beforehand. I could not believe how similar they looked. Barring sort of the exhaust and a few small touches, they are very, very similar. Both cars are actually spec'd very similarly as well. So they both had sunroof, they both had dynamic chassis control. And if you really didn't know your stuff, you wouldn't be able to tell them apart. I find it very difficult, being quite a car guy, when I see R lines. They look exactly like an R. Now, in my kind of opinion, does that kind of devalue the R? A little bit. But for me, it makes it a little bit more subtle, which is what I kind of like. If anything, for people who have R lines, it actually kind of makes them worth a little bit more, because you're getting 95% of the looks for a fair bit less. The owner's R line, I believe, cost them about £30,000. When you look at the R being sort of around between £40,000 and £45,000, there's a big price gap. Obviously, performance isn't there sort of back to back. You know, 150 horsepower and an R line is never going to keep up with sort of like a 300 plus horsepower Mark 8 Golf R with four-wheel drive. But it's still pretty brisk. You know, I had a passenger ride in the R line and, you know, it shifts. Obviously, it's softer and it rolls. It gets going. Not in the same way as the R, for sure. Inside, you'd be really surprised, but seats are exactly the same. I actually thought that was something quite unique for like GTI and R models, but no. You get the exact same seats, just in a more subtle grey colour. There's less blue touches. So if you have a GTI Club Sport, a Mark 8 Golf R, doesn't matter. It's got the exact same seats in an R line, the exact same seating position, the exact same steering wheel. All the things that you touch and feel are exactly the same, which is really, really weird. Even the paddles are the same as you get in a GTI. The R's paddles are a little bit longer, but that's really about it. Infotainment is obviously exactly the same because it's the same car. In sort of Mark 8 generation, it's really, really surprising how similar these cars are. And I think if you're quite sort of like image conscious in some ways, an R line might literally be all the car you'll need, because they're pretty quick, you know, good enough for day-to-day use for sure. And looks wise, you've got the looks right there. You also get a lot of different choices of colours as well, which you didn't get in the R. The R, you only got 3 colours, black, blue or white. That R line in specific one was in this really nice sort of moonstone grey type colour, and I thought it looked really, really good. And then obviously there's a benefit to like MPG being quite a fair bit better in that car as well. It's amazing how many different owners I've kind of spoken to in the past, and obviously that owner I did a Q&A with, and I've done first drives on the channel, but other owners have mentioned it as well about the R line, about how similar they look in Mark 8 generation. And honestly, when I was sort of pulling up in the owner's R, and I sort of caught a glance of it, I was like, oh, that looks really, really nice. And that was the R line. And I was like, if the colour palette was the same, you really wouldn't tell them apart. You know, you really, really couldn't. It's only really from the back where you kind of notice the difference between the two cars. With the lack of exhaust, it's got the fake vents. And then obviously the real exhaust in this car is the Akrapovic exhaust. It definitely surprised me how similar they made the car, because if you look at like the GTI range, there's no GTI line. If you're getting a GTI, you're getting that whole kind of package and product. But the R line kind of does step on the toes a little bit, maybe a little bit more than probably VW wanted, to be honest with you, because I mean, it's exactly the same. I know like Ford do the same with like the ST line and stuff, but there are some differences. Like in a full fat Focus ST, you get like different bolstered Recaro seats. And the ST line, you obviously just get the normal sort of basic seats. But this, they kind of were just like, yeah, let's just give it everything. They didn't make any differences, which I found really, really weird. Great for R line owners, but I suppose if you own an R, you might feel a little bit shortchanged. Obviously, it's all under the hood, the performance, the power, the suspension, the setup, the brakes. The R's in a completely different level. But if you're looking for an image type of thing, you're never really going to know those kind of things if you're in an R line, to be honest with you, which I thought was really, really surprising. I think it's a bit of a Q car to kind of go for in some ways. Residually, for some strange reason, it was the same in the Mark 7 generation. R lines hold their value really, really well. And in some cases, I've seen R lines more expensive than ours, because obviously more people would want that kind of car. Cheaper insurance group, better MPG, all those kind of things. More family orientated as well, I suppose, in some ways. With the gap being quite a little bit different with the Mark 8 between the R and the R line, obviously the price gap is a little bit bigger than the Mark 7. The savings are technically even better. Let me know your thoughts in the comments of what you think about the R line from your opinion, from the pictures I've kind of shown the images, because it's something that I found really, really surprising, just how many parts, and the parts that you actually touch and feel, they've kind of carried over, was a real kind of shock to me in the R line. And the thing is, they don't even have like R line badges, it's just the full R badge as opposed to the Mark 7 where they would have that little line. So really, really weird, and I guess in some ways it elevates the price of an R line, but yeah, might feel a bit shortchanged. Maybe you won't. Let me know your thoughts in the comments as well. But I kind of wanted to show you a little bit of back-to-back on the looks of the two cars. Obviously, in terms of driving feel, there's going to be nothing between them. You know, the R is in a completely different league. But in terms of everything else, you know, the R line has a lot of trump cards going for it, I feel. And it might be something that you might not know about. And if you're, yeah, if you're wanting to stretch to an R and you can't quite get there, an R line might be a good starting point, particularly if you're young. You know, I do get people commenting who are pretty young, you know, early 20s, trying to get themselves into a Mark 8R. And to be honest with you, you know, insurance alone is going to absolutely kill you, whoever you are and wherever you live and however much you use the car. Maybe start off with something like that, 150 horsepower, get to know the car, wait a few years, like I've said before, wait for the R to come down in price, and then kind of strike. It's just an option to have. Interesting to know if anyone's done that. But yeah, R line and R, nothing really in it.